So now we're to the problems that use conjugates. And remember, whenever you multiply by a conjugate, basically what you are left with is the first term squared minus the second term squared. Always going to be that. The first term squared minus the second term squared when you multiply by the conjugate. So, for number 17, we've got 6 divided by the square root of 3 minus the square root of 2. My conjugate in this case is going to be the square root of 3 plus the square root of 2. Now, if you ever get confused or just makes you feel better about doing these, I'm going to go ahead and put parentheses around all of those. The main reason being is I don't want to forget that I'm distributing that 6 to everything when I end up multiplying. So, for the bottom, I'm going to take my first term squared, which would have been 3, minus my second term squared, which would be 2. Now up at the top, I've got 6, and I've got the square root of 3 plus the square root of 2 that I'm going to multiply it by. And I'm actually going to wait to distribute this just to see if there's any reducing that I can do with this 6 before I multiply it out. What you end up getting 3 minus 2, which is 1, so that in effect gets canceled out. So you end up with 6 times the square root of 3 plus the square root of 2, which you can go ahead and write as 6 times the square root of 3 plus 6 times the square root of 2. Okay, number 18. Here I've got 10 divided by the square root of 3 plus the square root of 5. So my conjugate in this case, again, is just the opposite sign. So the square root of 3 minus the square root of 5. So when I multiply that, I've got 10 times that entire numerator. Again, I'm going to wait to distribute just to see if there's any reducing I can do. Then I take my first term and square it. So square root of 3 squared is 3. Minus my second term squared. Now when I do this, I end up getting 10. I'll go ahead and leave it on the outside right now. 10 times the square root of 3 minus the square root of 5. Then I've got this negative 2 now down at the bottom. 10 divided by negative 2 is going to be negative 5. And when I distribute that, I get negative 5 times the square root of 3 plus 5 times the square root of 5. And you might have distributed in a slightly different order, but as long as you got the final answer, you're in good shape. Okay. A little bit more to the last two here. So I've got number 19. So for this one, I've got the square root of 3 plus the square root of 2. And then I've got the square root of 3 minus the square root of 2. We cannot cancel these out the way they are. That's all one quantity. We've got a minus sign or a plus sign. We cannot do any canceling as it appears now. We've got to multiply by that conjugate. So we take the conjugate of that denominator, square root of 3 plus the square root of 2. Now with all these different terms here, in order to not get confused, I'm going to go ahead and put parentheses around everything that I need to. Now the denominator is a little bit easier to figure out. So that's just my first term squared, which is 3, minus my second term squared, which is now 2. Now, basically you're foiling this, so I've got 3 plus the square root of 6 plus the square root of 6 plus 2. So let me go ahead and do some cleaning up here. So in the top, 3 plus 2 is 5. And I have 2 square roots of 6. 3 minus 2 is 1, so I really don't need to rewrite that. And I have my final answer. The last one on this line is number 20, which has 2 minus the square root of 6 divided by the square root of 6 minus 3. Be careful there. That minus 3 is outside of that square root. So when I multiply by the conjugate, I get the square root of 6 plus 3. Again, I'm going to put some parentheses here just so I don't mix anything up. Again, I'm going to do the denominator first because that's just easier. So square root of 6, square root of 6. Be careful here. That 3 was not in a square root. So when you actually square that, you're going to have 9. Now here, this looks like something I'm going to have to FOIL out. And let's see what I get. So 2 times the square root of 6 plus 6 minus, well, I'll just go ahead and leave that as a square root of 36. But really, I could have written that as 6. And then minus 3 times the square root of 6. Alright, so let's see what I've got here. Now, up at the top, I had that square root of 36. I know that's 6. So basically, 6 minus 6, that's going to cancel. I have 2 square root of 6, and I was subtracting 3 square root of 6, so I'm going to have minus 1 of those off my numerator. 6 minus 9 is negative 3. I've got 2 negatives, so I need to go ahead and rewrite that as the square root of 6 divided by 3.